Greetings, beautiful beings, and welcome to another episode of Paranormal and Proud. I'm your host, Serena, and I'd like to thank you for joining me on another exciting journey into the unknown. Before we get started on tonight's episode, I'd like to remind everyone that it's Mental Health Awareness Month. How fitting would it be to be the same month as my birthday? Because we all struggle sometimes. And if you yourself don't deal with mental illness in some capacity, chances are you know someone who does. Take this as a reminder to always be kind to yourself and others. You never know what others are going through, and sometimes the sweetest smiles and the brightest lights can hold so much pain. If you're into the paranormal, chances are you enjoy a good creepy movie from time to time. Did you know that some movies are thought to be cursed? Not only horror movies, but even some with less ominous subject matter. I'll even be discussing a movie that was never able to be made due to all of the actors chosen to take on the lead roles, and even colleagues that simply looked at the scripts all died tragic deaths. As we head on this journey, the first movie that I will be discussing with you tonight is Poltergeist, the original. Did you know that 4 members of the cast suffered various tragic deaths between 1982 and 1988, including the face of the entire film? It was actually found out years later that during the pool scene, they used real human remains in the pool as skeletons. The actress that played the mom was told they were just props made out of rubber. And later she found out that fake rubber skeletons are far more expensive than real human remains were back then. The actors ended up coming to a consensus that is why the whole movie franchise was cursed, because they basically used real human desecrated remains. And if you want a haunted movie, that is probably how you're going to get a haunted movie. In the scene where the young boy of the movie got strangled by the clown doll with the freakishly long arm, he literally almost died. Unfortunately, the prop malfunctioned and he couldn't get the arm off around his neck and was literally choking. And Steven Spielberg ended up recognizing this and freed him before it was too late. And we came to find out that all of his reactions were actually legitimate. The Poltergeist 2 that came out in 1982 had several creepy happenings as well. Lights would go on and off, and they saw shadows, equipment would malfunction, and even Will Sampson, an actor in the film, was a real-life Native American shaman. And because of these strange happenings, they asked him to perform a cleansing ceremony. The cast and crew did feel a bit better and were able to complete the film, but sadly, Will Sampson died a year later from complications of a lung and heart transplant. Later on, the Poltergeist 3 that came out in 1988 had bizarre experience as well. Zelda Rubinstein, who was the star of the movie, had been experiencing strange light anomalies that would appear in pictures that were taken of her. There were blurs, and she even felt that these were following her around. She would see strobing lights out of the corner of her eye, and she couldn't seem to shake it. She believed that it was because when she had a photo taken of her, the exact moment her mother died. A special effects stunt went terribly wrong as well. There was an explosion that was supposed to shoot straight up into the air, and it ignited 4 cars, and several crew members got injured as well, and firefighters. The explosion took the shape of a giant flaming ball, and some of the cast and crew said it literally chased them around the set. Now we're going to move on to the most significant deaths that occurred. Dominique Dunne, on November 4th of 1982, at only 22 years old, was murdered by her abusive boyfriend. She broke up with him, and he ended up stalking her and broke in and strangled her to death in a fit of rage. Later on, he claimed he had no recollection of the incident. The star and face of the franchise, Heather O'Rourke, the little girl who beat out Drew Barrymore, she tragically died at the age of 12. She had collapsed in her home in 1988 after experiencing flu-like symptoms. She was rushed to the hospital and suffered a cardiac arrest on the way, but she was revived. She was later airlifted to the nearby Children's Hospital, but suffered another cardiac arrest, and after having surgery for intestinal stenosis, she ended up passing away. Her cause of death was officially congenital stenosis of the intestine complicated by septic shock. James Caan, as in Kahn, not the James Caan of the mobster movies, was hired to write the novelization of the first two films. When a bolt of lightning hit his home and blew up his air conditioner, the faceplate hit him in the back, and although he recovered, he reported strange happenings. When he played video games, the video games started playing themselves in very disturbing ways, according to him. And I couldn't find any elaboration on that, but you could only imagine. Finally, Gil Kenan, who directed the 2015 remake, had strange occurrences from the beyond as well. The house he chose, due to its quite creepiness, was actually haunted by a lady in black. They experienced equipment failures along with strange noises. So to wrap up Poltergeist, what do you think? Do you think that it was just all shenanigans, or do you think there's a possibility that using desecrated human remains, there's going to be some kind of negative energy that's going to come after them? I mean, I don't know. As I said before, if you want some kind of curse, desecrated human remains is probably going to get you a curse, at the very least, negative happenings. The next movie we're going to be exploring is The Omen, and it's viewed as one of the most terrifying movies ever made. It depicts the return of the Antichrist in the form of a young boy named Damien. His parents, while at the hospital when he was being born, the original baby that his mother had ended up dying and ended up getting switched with this young demon baby, and they had no idea. One of the tragic events that occurred is that of Gregory Peck's son. Gregory Peck, who was one of the main characters of the movie, his son in real life took his own life. And that helped Gregory Peck become very determined to dedicate his life to the movie after the tragedy. Another tragedy that occurred was when John Richardson, who created the special effects, was working on his next movie in Holland. He and his wife, along with another visual effects designer named Liz Moore, were driving late at night and got struck head-on by an oncoming car. Richardson was struck unconscious, and when he awoke, he saw a road sign that said Omen, which ended up being a nearby town. But the creepy thing about it, other than the coincidence, was it was 66.6 miles away. The next awful thing he experienced was seeing the body of Liz Moore. Her body was headless. She had been decapitated by a flying wheel. In the scene where Damien and his mom were in a car being attacked by wild baboons, there was a baboon that got in the car, and thankfully he was being handled by an animal trainer. But unfortunately, later on, the animal trainer was tragically killed by a tiger that he was training later on. Now let's move on to the crazy occurrences that involved lightning. Gregory Peck was on a plane on his way to London. The plane was struck by lightning, and it was pretty damaged to where it had to perform an emergency landing. It nearly crashed into the Atlantic Ocean. And then there was Mace Newfield. He experienced the exact same thing. His plane was also struck by lightning, causing the engine to explode, and it also had to perform an emergency landing after nearly crashing into the Atlantic Ocean as well. David Seltzer, who was a screenwriter, also had his plane struck by lightning over the Atlantic. I know it sounds like a broken record, but it literally happened 3 times. And then one more lightning strike included producer Harvey Bernhardt. He was almost struck by lightning while standing in a field in Rome. And lightning strikes, that is getting to be a little bit too much to just be a coincidence. Now to another animal scene. In the scene where Gregory Peck was running from a pack of dogs, a stuntman took over the scene when the dogs attacked. The dogs ended up acting super possessed and savagely attacked the stuntman. They were ripping through his protective gear, and the dog trainers couldn't get them off of him. He got pretty injured. Now, as far as the omen goes, what do you think? Do you think that it could be coincidences, or do you think that dealing with the devil could bring some bad juju into the mix? It all depends what you believe. Some people believe it's just bad luck. Others believe that you can't mess with the devil. Either way, I truly believe those lightning strikes were a bit crazy to be coincidental. But, crazy things like that happen sometimes. I guess we really can't discuss Cursed Filth without talking about The Exorcist. It's one of the most iconic horror movies of all time. The movie came out in 1973 and was based on the book by the same name by William Peter Blatty. Some even believe that the book itself was evil. Blatty based his book on the real-life exorcism. He based it off what is known as the exorcism of Roland Doe that happened in St. Louis, Missouri. Blatty changed a few details, such as the gender of the child, but it was actually pretty closely based on it. The Exorcist was actually the top-grossing movie of all time until the remake of It came out in 2017 by Stephen King. Upon its release in theaters, there were reports of people getting sick. Vomiting in the aisles, fainting during some of its more disturbing scenes. They actually would place EMTs outside of the theater and inside just in case people were passing out. There were a few lawsuits that happened because people would get injured so bad, but I believe one of the main ones got settled out of court, so we don't know exactly what happened. The movie itself took about 9 months to film, but there were plenty of accidents and injuries and even a fire that nearly destroyed the entire set. A fire broke out on set in the middle of the night early on. It was an electrical fire that broke out unexpectedly. Everything was destroyed except for the bedroom of the main character, Regan. She was played by Linda Blair. The entire set had to be completely rebuilt from scratch. There are also some long-term injuries that happened to the cast. Linda Blair, during the scene where her bed was bouncing up and down and she was levitating, and she was completely horrified during the scene. And believe it or not, those were legitimate reactions because she was being injured. She ended up getting a spinal fracture during that scene. Unfortunately, they didn't stop the scene because they honestly thought she was just doing an excellent job of acting while she was literally horrified during the whole time. Linda Blair was not the only one to suffer a lifelong back injury. Ellen Bernstein, who played Regan's mom, Chris McNeil, was performing a scene where she was to be jolted across the room by an unknown force. The director wanted her to be taken off guard to make sure her reaction was more natural, but before she could be warned, she got yanked wearing the special harness. Due to being caught off guard, she also experienced long-term back problems. Several of the actors had close family members that died while filming. Some could simply be a coincidence because of their advanced age, like grandparents, but some of them were a little bit more suspicious. In total, there were 9 deaths that were connected in one way or another to the cast and crew of the movie. The actor Jack McGowan who played the fictional character Burke Dennings, died prior to the film's completion due to complications from the flu. Most of the deaths that happened during the filming were family members of the cast and crew, except for Jack McGowan. A lesser-known fact about The Exorcist is there is actually a convicted murderer that briefly appeared in the film. Paul Bateson had a brief non-speaking role as an x-ray tech during the scene in the hospital where Regan gets an x-ray. He was convicted of one murder and was also suspected to be a serial killer responsible of the deaths of several men. However, there wasn't enough evidence of the other murders to convict him. All of these unfortunate happenings could be the result of a cursed production due to dabbling in the inner dark workings of the devil and to banish demons. Little did they know they could have been conjuring negative energies of the unknown in the process. Or it could simply be a bunch of unfortunate coincidences hyped up by the hysteria of the dark subject of the storyline. I think most of us know back in the 70s there was a lot more fear of the devil. I mean, I'm sure there is nowadays, but it was pretty hyped up back then. And the CGI was, well, back then it was great. Now, it would be subpar at best, but it was a very advanced movie for the time. So what do you think about all this? Is it cursed, or is it just a bunch of sad coincidences? The first three movies that we discussed were classic horror movies. This next one wasn't a horror movie at all. Rebel Without a Cause is actually a classic Hollywood star-studded movie that came out in 1955. James Dean and Natalie Wood depicted a classic romantic plotline of the time. As much as the movie brought people in, there was a bit of a dark side to the happenings that affected to the cast, not only before the movie was done filming, but even decades later. Shall we take a walk down the dark side of glamorous Hollywood together? I think so. As I said before, the star of the movie was James Dean along with Natalie Wood. And before the movie finished, James Dean died a month prior. He was driving his newly purchased Porsche 550 Spyder he named Little Bastard. He got in a horrific crash involving his vehicle and another. His injuries were far too severe to survive. And James Dean was actually an experienced race car driver, so it's kind of strange how he would be so careless that way. It was believed that James Dean's car was even cursed. After the wreck, some of the parts that could be salvaged were sold. And there were many accidents that involved the parts that were from Dean's wrecked car. I don't know, maybe naming it Little Bastard for the time kind of gave it an ominous feeling to it. The next death was Nick Adams. He also starred in the movie. He was found dead in his home, and it was thought to be a drug overdose, but it was unknown. Others suspected it was due to foul play, and it was really never solved. Sal Mino died at the age of 37. He was attacked, and although his attacker was caught, it was unknown what the murderer was provoked by. And then there's Natalie Wood. She was James Dean's love interest in the movie. She drowned as an adult off of Catalina Island in California. She was with her husband, Robert Wagner, and their good friend, Christopher Walken. They were having a late-night party on their boat, Splendor. She fell off and drowned after everybody went to bed, supposedly. No one was charged with the death, though. During her autopsy, there were injuries that showed that there could have been foul play, some abuse that may have happened. But Natalie Wood always had a fear of dark water that those close to her all knew about. So it was pretty ironic and sad that she drowned at night in dark water. What a tragedy. So all of these incidents could very well be just coincidence, or could they be related to a curse? That side of Hollywood back in the 50s, there was a lot of darkness, a lot of abuse that went on, unfortunately, and the actors didn't get treated very well on set. James Dean especially had such an acting career ahead of him. He died at such a young age, very tragically. Who knows what would have come out of his acting career in the future if he were still around. The final movie we're going to explore, well, it actually never got to be a movie. It's Atuk. Atuk was supposed to be based on a book by the same name. It wasn't a horror story, but it was going to be a fish out of water type story. The book depicts an Inuit poet from Baffin Island that gets transferred to Toronto, a freezing, sparsely populated Canadian island, to a big Canadian city. The movie would have used Alaska moving to New York instead, but it's just about the same idea. The problem is that the movie never got to be made. All of the actors that were set to play the lead character ended up dying, too young at that. Let's dive into it, shall we? The first actor that was meant to play the lead was John Belushi. He had been offered the lead role in 1982. Unfortunately, March 5th of that year, Belushi was found dead of apparent drug overdose in his hotel room, thought to be that of a speedball, in Chateau Marmont. He was only 33. 2 months after his death, a woman by the name of Catherine Evelyn Smith admitted to had been with him that night and gave him his fatal dose. She was actually charged with first-degree murder after that. Years later, in 1986, Sam Kinison got offered the lead role. In 1988, filming finally got underway. Then Kinison got through 8 days of filming before he insisted that he had creative control of the project. He began to rewrite the script. This began an uproar in the production, and a lawsuit began because he became pretty difficult. Finally, the movie was put on hold for a while until 1992, and it began again. Unfortunately, during the negotiations of the film, Kinison died on April 10th of 1992. He was in a head-on car accident that a 17-year-old driver caused, and he was drunk. The other driver, not Sam Kinison. Kinison initially survived the crash and didn't appear to be injured, but he began to start talking to himself incoherently. He appeared to be talking to somebody else, saying, "I don't want to die," and "yeah, okay." He lost consciousness after that and could not be resuscitated. He died on the scene. He had internal injuries. He was only 38 at the time. His wife was also in the car accident, and she only had a mild concussion. The production team was determined to keep this project going because they really felt they had a special storyline here. In 1994, they approached John Candy. They offered him the role, and Candy was really excited to study the script. But in March of that year, he died as well. He was in Mexico working on another project, and he died of a heart attack. John Candy was only 43. Before passing away, John Candy had asked a friend of his, Michael O'Donoghue, to read the script in hopes that he would possibly join the cast. O'Donoghue also passed away. O'Donoghue suffered from chronic migraines, and it was found that he had a cerebral hemorrhage, and he was only 54 when he died. Moving on to 1997. Chris Farley was offered the lead role. It was known that John Belushi was Chris Farley's idol, so Farley was so excited to pursue the lead. Unfortunately, at the age of 33, the same age as his idol John Belushi, he died of a drug overdose, possibly the same kind of drug that killed Belushi, a speedball. It was only a few months after reading the script he lost his life on December 18th of 1997. He was sadly found dead in his Chicago apartment by his younger brother. Now, Chris Farley has always been one of my favorite actors of all time, even though he passed away when I was only 10 years old. And he's in movies that I still quote to this day. I mean, Tommy Boy, I quote that bad boy on a regular basis, even so many years later. Similar to John Candy, Chris Farley had a friend that wanted to be introduced to the script. Phil Hartman had read the script at Farley's request. Only 5 months after Farley's tragic death, Hartman was murdered by his wife, Bryn Hartman. He and Bryn had got into a heated argument. While during the argument, Phil threatened to leave her if she didn't stop her drug use. At 3 a.m., she shot him twice in the head and once in the side. Then she drove to a friend's house and confessed the brutal murder. Her friend really didn't believe her, so the friend drove her back to Bryn's house. And when the friend called the police after arriving on the scene and seeing what had happened, they escorted the kids out. Yes, there were kids in the house when this all happened. While doing so, Bryn locked herself in the bathroom and shot herself, taking her own life. It's hard to believe that all of these tragedies can be connected to one movie, and at that, a movie that never even happened. I really don't think anybody would even want to approach the script after all of that. It killed some pretty iconic actors of the time. Actors like James Dean from Rebel Without a Cause could have had flourishing, amazing careers ahead of them. It's clear that even the bright lights of Hollywood hold dark secrets. Is it a weird coincidence, or is it a curse? Now, to wrap it up, personally, I don't believe in curses, but I believe in karma. And the thing of it is, though, there were so many young lives lost at the time. Some lives that would have had flourishing careers ahead of them if they weren't taken so soon. Hollywood has a lot of dark secrets that we may never ever know about. Behind the scenes is complete mystery sometimes. Now, a few of these movies, as in the first 3 horror movies, I probably watched at way too young of an age. I really wasn't allowed to watch horror movies when I was young, but my aunt was a little more lenient, and I would go over and hang out with my cousins, and she would set up a tent in the backyard. We would run an extension cord and hook up the TV with the VHS player and pop in a tape that some of you youngins probably have no idea about, but, old versions of DVDs, the prehistoric stuff. But we would sit with some popcorn and watch some creepy horror movies, and it was a blast. And my parents listened to this, so Dad, don't get mad at Aunt Carrie. She was just having fun with us. All of these experiences shaped me and who I am today, and I'm really proud of who I am today. That's, of course, why I named my podcast what I did. And every step of the way, I do it with pride. Remember, my beautiful beings, take care of each other, take care of yourselves, be good to yourself, and just live life to your fullest. Never be afraid to take a chance, because I am so glad I took a chance with this podcast, because I am having a blast with it. Thanks again for joining me. You guys have a wonderful night. And until next time, I'm Serena with the Paranormal and Proud podcast. Thank you.